everybody. Welcome to ABA Inside Track, the podcast that's like reading in your car, but safer. I'm your host, Robert Perry Cruz, and with me, as always, are my fabulous co-hosts.
Hi, Rob. It's me, Diana.
And it's me, Jackie.
Hey, how's everybody doing on this fine evening, this fine recording session?
Great.
You ready to talk about the best in behavior analytic research?
Yes.
On a given topic?
Whoop, 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 whoop.
What the hell was that?
I don't know what that was.
That was me being excited.
Oh, okay.
It's excitement.
Whoop, whoop.
Sound like those Sesame Street Muppets.
Oh, yeah.
I love those things.
I know.
They're like my favorite character.
Yeah. But this isn't a podcast where we share our favorite Sesame Street Muppet sound effects. We're going to talk about behavior analysis and behavior analytic research, like I said already. If you're new to the show, welcome. We're glad to have you here. And if you're here again, thanks so much for coming back. We appreciate it.
I see you, and I am happy to see your face.
And I appreciate your presence. So, like every week, we take a specific topic in the world of applied behavior analysis, and we share some recent research on the subject. Kind of like a little journal club for you and your friends. If the voice coming from your radio or iPod or whatever are your friends and not your actual friends. And you can't talk to us because we can't hear you. I mean, you can talk to us. We just can't hear you. Sorry.
You can talk to us later. Or you can talk to the podcast. I mean, you can talk to your friends about the podcast.
Yeah, that would work too. It's like double.
We recommend
really
that.
Meta.
Too.
It's really
and
meta.
Talking to the podcast and then sending us an email.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Anyway, this week's topic is help. Yeah, that's right. It's help. We're going to be talking about asking for help, gaining help, and lots of different kinds of help. Not just help with a task, but help with being lost and finding your way home, because it's a very important topic to know how to ask for help. That's right.
Are you going to keep doing that?
I might try to do it. I won't do it like when you guys are talking, because you don't have the headphones on, so you don't even know if it's playing.
No, I can hear it a little bit.
I can hear it too.
Okay, good. I cranked it. So today we're going to be talking about two different articles. The first is Teaching Children with Autism to Request Help with Difficult Tasks by Rodriguez, Levesque, Cohrs, and Niemeier from the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis, 2017. And then we'll be slightly switching topics to Teaching Help Seeking when Lost to Individuals with Autism Spectrum Disorder by Carlile, DeBar, Reeve, and Meyer from the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis, 2018. So some recent updates in the world of help requesting, help seeking behavior. So without any further ado, why don't we get started? And Diana, you're going to do the 2017 article on asking for help, right? You're going to be our guide.
Cool.
Can you help me by talking about this article?
Cool. Now?
Diana, listen. Help!
Sure thing, Rob. So I'm actually excited to talk about this because I feel like it's a highly applicable topic for many of our listeners who are working with individuals with autism. I worked up for a long time in early intervention, and it is one of the first things that you teach someone, right? Is how to ask for help. So
ask for what?
For help.
Help! Oh, okay.
That's so great that you keep doing that.
You can listen to the headphones. No one wants to wear the headphones. I think they look dorky.
They do look dorky,
well,
but
no
they
one knows.
They don't look as dorky here as when you wear them out running.
I think they look great.
I think they look fine when he goes running in them.
Thank
Have
you,
you
Jackie.
seen him running in them?
No, but I can imagine it.
It looks great. They're like, that guy must produce a podcast or something with those headphones.
You look like you're about to try to land an airplane.
Do I? The problem is if I wear the earbuds, I think they're going to fall out of my ears, and then I'll have to ask someone for some help to kick them up.
Wow.
All right. So
You should probably talk before I just keep playing sound effects.
Yeah, seriously. So I chose this topic because I feel like it's a really helpful one for our listeners, because it's one of those things where you're like, of course we're going to train requesting for help, but I mean, I honestly have never read a lot of research on it, and there is some, but there's not that much research out there either. So I thought it would be good to kind of review and refresh and think about the best way to teach requesting help. And then Jackie is going to talk about requesting help in a really specific scenario that's going to require some other types of discrimination as well, and that's a really important topic too. First, I was going to ask you guys, what are some common contexts that you have taught help in the past?
Gaining items that are out of reach.
Okay.
I worked for many years in preschool. Can I share a funny anecdote?
Yeah.
I'm going to be the Jackie of the episode. Share a funny anecdote.
Yes.
So I was teaching, it was a preschool life skill. I shared it. If you listen to our episode on the preschool life skills.
It's episode 34.
Episode 34, then, and a lot of people have been interested in preschool life skills recently, so I hope I'm not boring the audience by resharing this anecdote. But I had a whole group of pretty high functioning kids. And when we got to baseline for teaching help, everyone said, we don't need to baseline that. I said, well, we have to. It's part of the procedure. I bet most of them get it. And everyone assumed that they would get it. So we put a bunch of toys up on a really high shelf. And we said, okay, guys, can you get those toys so we can play with them? And it was like 4 or 5 kids that spent maybe either the 2 minutes you give them to do, say, I need help or ask for help. They just stood below it and sort of were like, that's really high.
Oh, no.
That's so high up. How do you get those toys? Those toys are high up. And it's like nobody ever said the words, I need help. Or even sort of, can you help me? Or I think some people made statements like, I can't do it. Or they're high up, but not ever actually asking for
They were giving you disguised
help.
man.
Yes, they were giving a lot of disguised mans.
Like, were they
no one's
directed
giving me a
at
pure man.
Were they directed at an adult?
Mostly to each other and sort of to the cosmos, like, oh, I
love
hope.
that.
But then it just made me realize, oh, Jesus, what do we do with our children in school, our preschool children with disabilities? We've taught them just throw a man out into the universe
Right,
and
yeah.
someone will save you. And it's like, no, that's a terrible. Ugh. So, yes, it's important to teach
Yeah,
help.
no, that's a really good point. And did they try to like solve the problem?
No, they sort of milled about and sort of looked around. They only had 2 minutes. So, I mean, they might
Right.
have if we gave them longer or we told them you have to get it no matter what. They might have like tried to climb on something, but it was in school. So they probably
you're
been
not
told don't
supposed to.
climb on things, don't get that, don't go up high. So.
It would have been amazing if they made themselves like a teepee and like they're like, get on my back and then I'll pull you
Oh, a
up.
pyramid?
Yeah, that's what I meant. Like, like a totem pole.
Mhm.
And then I got it up high. That would be hilarious.
That would be awesome, but also unsafe.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So we better not train that.
But no one ever asked for help. No, never.
Never.
I've trained the response, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
And I've trained the response, I need the missing item.
Right.
Yeah. So that's real common.
Yeah,
Right?
that is a really common
Yeah.
scenario. Both of those scenarios. If something is out of reach or can't be opened. I've done a lot of, here's your cereal bar, still in the wrapper. Or here's your water bottle with the cap on.
Yeah.
Right? Those types of things. Or you just stand next to the door, the closed door.
Yeah, right. For a long time. Expectantly eye gazing.
Yeah, a lot of expectant looks. Yeah. So those are really common scenarios that help is usually taught in, and I think that they're appropriate context, but the authors of this study wanted to make a really important point, which is kind of why they made this study, which is if we are teaching help in a particular context, and every time a child encounters that context, they immediately ask for help, then we've just taught a particular discriminated operant in a particular condition, but not with relation to having the proper EO in place.
Right. Yeah.
Right? So just if every time you go to the door, the kid looks at you and says, I need help, then that may or may not be true. They may be able to open the door
Right.
on their own, right?
And it would be nice to have them at least try some things, right? So as they get older,
Yeah.
we'd want them to open the door and not ask for help every single time.
Exactly. And I have encountered this with parents as well, because there's always this balance of providing incidental teaching opportunities, such as requesting help, versus programming for increased independence. And those are each important, right? And sometimes parents will say, well, why did you put that thing out of reach if we want them to play independently?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a really fair question.
Mm-hmm.
And I usually say, yeah, we do want them to play independently, and we're working on that in this context. But there's always going to be that time where the item's out of reach, or the marker ran out of ink, or the batteries are dead, or they can't get this certain type of box open. And when they encounter that scenario, that's when they need to know to come ask someone for help or to open it. And there needs to be kind of a balance between how we're going to teach those two things. So the authors of this study also brought in a really cool point, I thought, from Rosales, Ruiz, and Baer, 1977, if you guys remember that article.
Mm-hmm.
And
Behavioral cusps.
exactly, yes.
Yep.
And Rosales, Ruiz, and Baer use this particular example as an example of what's called a negative behavioral cusp, which means that it's actually a skill if learned is going to impede independence.
Right.
So if you learn to just ask for help all the time, then you're not going to achieve independence in these varied areas. So it can be a detrimental skill if not taught properly. So that's why the authors of this study wanted to build in the opportunity to ask for help within a larger behavioral chain. And the first step of that chain is always going to be that there's an EO that's established that they need to access some item. And before they ask for help, they try to do the thing with the item.
Yeah.
That was not very eloquent, but
No, it makes sense.
you know what I mean, right? Mm-hmm. So they need to attempt the item itself, and then sometimes it's going to work, sometimes it's not going to work. So if it works, great, they just continue on and complete the task themselves. And if it doesn't work, that is when you need to ask for help. So the EO has been established, and only when that EO is established that, oh, I can't do this thing on my own, I need to ask for help, is it an appropriate time to ask for help.
Dan, if you're in an environment where there are multiple EOs in place, and there's one that has sort of the largest kind of magnitude of effect, would you refer to that as the captain EO?
I would, in fact.
I like that. Oh my goodness.
Did you know that there's usually...
I don't get it.
Did you know there's usually Jackson 5 EOs that are in place at one time?
Wow, really?
Yeah,
Ooh.
there are, but just only one is the captain EO.
Mm.
I don't get
Do
it.
you remember that study they did with the primates where they tried to figure out who was the man in the mirror?
Oh, guys.
Gotta follow your ethics or you'll be a smooth behavior analytic criminal.
It's so hard to not be married to you two, because then I can never be part of the inside jokes.
I think by podcast law you are married to us.
That is true. We have been together for quite some time. One thing I like that
We'll never tell you to beat it, Jackie. We want you to stay forever.
Thanks, guys.
What's the EO? What's the EO, Annie?
Oh my gosh. That's amazing.
Anyway, everyone, I'm going to leave this episode. I have nothing to contribute, apparently.
What I wanted to say
Uh-huh.
is that I love that the authors talk about this as a limitation of the preschool life skills curriculum, because they are arranging those evocative situations to teach all of those essential preschool life skills. However, they don't arrange non-evocative situations to see if the behavior is still going to occur.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
I thought that was critical in bringing up in kind of like the foundation of this study.
Yeah, it's such a great point. And,
Yeah.
you know, when I've described it to parents, I said, oh, yeah, we're going to make sure we do that. But the way that this study is established, they lay it out really clearly, and there's opportunities with each of the, I'm going to go into it, obviously, but each of the stimuli that they present for what they call capable and incapable trials. And they program for it in that particular way, and then you only get it correct if you only ask for help on the incapable trial. So I thought it was really cool and a great addition to the literature. So let me tell you about it. So as I said, they had 3 purposes of this study. The first was to establish requesting for help only during those incapable trials. So that was what they were measuring. They also wanted to check, number 2, on undesirable generalization to other types of items in which participant could engage with it on their own, but they still asked for help. And then third, they wanted to check for desirable generalization to untrained stimuli. So those were the kind of the 3 main points. There were 3 participants in this study. They described them as being placed in an early intervention setting, but they were actually ages 4 to 8.
Mm.
So like 8's
Old.
Kind of
you know,
old.
I don't know if I would really call that EIBI, but they were still, young elementary school age children. Wilson was 8. He had a diagnosis of PDD and OS. Cooper was 4. He had a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. And Sylvie was age 6. And she also had a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder.
I have a Sylvie,
Yeah.
just so everyone knows.
These are all 3 great names.
Yeah,
Just
they
want
are
to throw
great
that out
names.
there. Cooper. I think they're named for Cooper, Heron, and Heward.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? So all 3 of these participants could mand using 3 to 5 word phrases. They had a vocabulary between 15 and 100 mands, and they could all follow multi-step instructions. So that gives you a little bit of a feel for the types of skills that these learners had. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and describe to you guys what the tasks look like. So I feel like you have a fair idea now of what happened in this study, but I want you to hear the stimuli that they use because it really brings it all together for me.
Sure.
And I'm basically just going to read them
Yeah.
to you. They divided them up, first of all. They did divide them up into 3 sets.
Okay.
Within each set, there were 3 tasks, and it was a multiple baseline across task sets for each participant. So
Awesome.
they taught set A, set B
With
remained
the
a
3
baseline.
tasks.
Yes, and then
Yep.
the 3 tasks within that set were alternated during the teaching trials.
That makes sense.
So just kind of so you get a feel for that. So for each task, there was an incapable and a capable trial. So the first task was opening a glass jar. There were crayons within the jar. In one jar, they could open because it was just screwed on loosely, and then one jar they could not open because it was screwed on tight, and the instruction that they were given was color the something or other. Next up, there was taking a cap off of a marker, because again, the instruction was color the something or other. One, for the incapable trial, the cap was glued on.
I love that. They're like,
I know. It ain't coming off. And
how
then
did they get that off then?
they had two of the same marker, one with the cap glued on and one with it off. And in between trials, they would like put it under the table and switch it out.
They'd be like magicians.
Yeah.
I've got
Some
it.
sleight of hand happening. Yes. And then in the capable trial, the cap was not glued on. They had a toy. It was like a speak and spell kind of thing.
VTech.
Well, I guess it's a little more advanced than a speak and spell. Okay. They said, here, play with this toy. And there are either batteries in the toy or no batteries in the toy. They had a box. They said, put the box on the table. And the box either was empty or it weighed 14 kilograms. I thought originally I read 14 pounds. I was like, oh gosh, that's so heavy.
30 pounds. 14 kilograms is 30 pounds.
Oh, that goes the other way.
Yeah.
Oh, geez, that's super heavy. Okay, so yeah, they had no chance of lifting it.
No.
Okay.
14 kilograms, 30.865 pounds.
Woo! Okay. So they had a super heavy box that they could not lift. They had an item up on a shelf. They said, go get that item. And either there was a stool present in the capable trial or no stool in the incapable trial. There was a open, go get your pencil out of the drawer or the closet, and it was either locked or unlocked. There was write something with a mechanical pencil that either had lead or no lead. It was open the water bottle, which either they could do or it had the cap glued on. They said cut something with scissors, and either the scissors were normal scissors or they were glued shut.
Wow.
I know.
This would have made me so angry. Just imagine.
I don't know what the extinction burst was like initially.
Right.
They didn't talk about that.
Yeah.
Well, they immediately prompted them.
Sure,
Initially.
that's true.
So, and then the final one was glue this on the paper, and either the glue stick had the cap glued on or not glued on. So that gives you a pretty good idea, right,
Yeah.
of these different tasks, and they were pretty creative in how they approached them. So I thought that was pretty fun. So first of all, they did a pre-assessment, which was just to check on the fine motor skills of the participants to make sure that if they were asking them to do these things that they could actually do them. So that happened first. And then I've described the general procedure kind of already. They really thought of this as a behavior chain, and the first step of that chain was the initial attempt to activate the item that they were going to need to complete the task. Then from there, it was either, if it was a capable trial, completing the task, or if it was an incapable trial, requesting help, and then from there, completing the task. So it's, you can think of it as a behavior chain.
I know you mentioned that it was a concurrent multiple probe design.
Yeah.
I love that it's concurrent. You very rarely see someone be really specific that it's concurrent. And also, they also staggered the teaching stats for one of the participants, Sylvie, to demonstrate that it wasn't the set
Oh, yeah.
that was taught, but it was just the actual procedures, and I love that too. They were really thoughtful in their design to ensure that functional control was demonstrated and not just a byproduct of their procedure. So I really liked that about this study.
They did a great job.
Yeah.
And then that concurrency is going to come back around in the end.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate that they actually noted for us that it was a concurrent, and they took the time to make it concurrent.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
It's hard to do if you've ever tried to do it.
Yeah.
So way to go.
Yeah, good job. So in this general procedure, they were arranging these evocative scenarios and then teaching the behavior chain of attempting and then requesting as needed in order to complete the task. And then, like I said, they arranged these into sets of 3 tasks. There were 12 trials within a training session, and they alternated the 3 tasks throughout the session so that there were 4 trials per each task.
Makes sense. 4 times 3, 12.
Yep, that's math.
Math.
And then within those 12 trials, 6 had the EO present, so they were the incapable trials, and 6 had the EO absent, so they were the capable trials.
I like that. So you never really knew either, right? So
yeah, so a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, they didn't do like the 6 EOs first and then the 6 non-EOs second. Like they rotated them around, which probably made for a really cool data sheet.
Probably did.
At least that was in the supplementary materials.
You might be able to request it.
Yeah, but I think that's also interesting to note too, is that the student couldn't just immediately guess that, oh, now I know I'm sitting down with the experimenter. I know that it's going to be like, I have to ask, and then I don't have to ask.
Yeah.
Because that happens a bunch when we're not thinking clearly when we're teaching
this was
procedures.
much more.
Yeah, this was super thoughtful.
So they did a great job with that. And then the dependent variables that they were looking at were whether there was attempt or no attempt, whether they request help, and then whether they used a vocal response. And then they broke those down. And then when we talk about the graph, it's broken into these 4 different scenarios where they tried to complete the task and then asked for help. They tried to complete the task and did not ask for help. They did not try and ask for help. And they did not try and did not ask for help. So just so you know, that's coming.
Right.
Be prepared. Be prepared.
So ultimately, we'd want the first 2. Why would we want them to try and ask for help and try and then not ask for help because they've done it theoretically.
Right. Because they should always be trying. Otherwise, they don't have the information needed in order to establish the proper EO and then ask or not ask.
Right.
Got it. Okay. From there, we actually moved into teaching.
Teach.
We did pre-teaching, which was basically baseline.
Mm-hmm.
It was presenting the task, and then sometimes it was capable and sometimes incapable, and then just recording what they did. And then from there were really 2 different teaching conditions that they used. The first one was a 5-second prompt delay to assist them with the attempt at engaging with the materials, and then a 0-second prompt delay to prompting for help. And then the second one after that was a 5-second prompt delay to the attempt, prompting for the attempt as needed, and then a 2-second prompt delay to requesting help if needed.
I think it's really helpful to read the procedures here, because sometimes when I look at graphs, like when I look at research articles, I go to the graphs first, and just looking at the graph, I was a little bit confused because they have the 5-second PD to attempt overlaid on the 0-second to help, and that was a little bit confusing on the graph, but once I read it in the procedures, it really clarified. I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But just looking at the graph, I was like,
it is a busy graph.
It's very busy, but it's beautiful. But that part was a little confusing. So if you're going to look at the graph first, know that you might need some clarification in the procedure section.
Yeah. So basically, the whole time, there was a 5-second prompt delay to add assistance for the attempt.
Right.
So they gave them more time on that, and then they used prompt delay for the requesting help. For Wilson, the requesting help was a textual prompt of, I think it said, help me. And then for Cooper and Sylvie, they provided a vocal prompt for them to repeat. So all of their responses were vocal. And then following training, there was a post-teaching session in which they determined if the skills were maintained. And then there was either a treatment extension or generalization probes for Wilson, and then for Cooper and Sylvie.
Right.
And they brought that up, which brings us back around to talking about the concurrent baseline, because for Wilson, you can see that it was truly a concurrent multiple baseline design, but they didn't do the initial pre-teaching baseline for him for sets B and C initially. So because they didn't do that at the start of the study, they couldn't consider it to be generalization because they didn't have those initial pre-points. So for him, they just called it treatment extension.
Right. Which makes sense.
Yeah. And I kind of love that.
I do too.
Because they're like, whoops, we didn't do it. Right?
Yeah, they're like, oh no.
Yeah, we didn't do it. Doesn't mean that we can't still gather what we need to from his data,
right,
but we just don't have those same initial baselines. They did take baseline later on, just immediately before teaching, but because it was a concurrent multiple baseline,
right,
they didn't have those initial data, and they weren't going to fudge it or anything like that. They're just like, we didn't have them, guys.
Right.
We can't say these things, and I don't know.
I like that.
I just like the transparency.
Yeah,
right?
They're like, we can't, we're not going to make false claims in the results and discussion section.
Right. Yeah, so let's take a look at Wilson's graph here.
Sure.
So on the x-axis, we have sessions, and then on the y-axis, we have percentage of trials with these varied types of responding, which I mentioned before. What we're really looking for is either try and ask for help, or try and don't ask for help, depending on the scenario there. He learned set A first, and set A, the data are broken down into incapable trials and capable trials.
I love that.
Yes.
I think I bet at one point they had graphed all of this graph together, and it would have been a nightmare
you would not have been able to
right,
understand.
anything.
Exactly.
Right. So it's beautiful. So they've just added these two together on two panels, two legs, one might say, of the graph. And I think it's so clear.
Right. Exactly. So in the incapable trials, you only want to see the response of try plus ask for help. And in the capable trials, you only want to see the response of try plus no help.
Right.
So there's 4 data paths on each of them, but you only want to see one data path stay up near 100%. So like that makes it so much more easy.
Digestible.
Exactly. So much more digestible. So initially they had pre-teaching in which the only response that Wilson engaged in was he tried on all opportunities, but never asked for help.
Bless his little heart, right?
Yeah, he just kept trying is probably what happened on those incapable trials. It's like, why won't the marker open?
I can see his little face now, like scrunched.
I know, right? Like, this one's really stuck. And then they moved into teaching. So the initial phase was 5 seconds prompt delay to the attempt, which I would think he probably did not require since he did end baseline. And then a 0 second prompt delay to asking for help. So there was some errorless learning occurring, or at least presented there for requesting help. And then that section is gray, presented with gray background. And that is noted because it's not independent responding there, because they immediately prompted their response.
Thanks for the clarification.
You bet.
Yeah.
Right. So it's at 100%, but it's because it's prompted. From there, a 2 second delay prompt for requesting help. Then you can see that the data path is now showing independent responding. So you see an initial drop in his independence, but he has a steadily increasing trend for his asking for help following the attempt. And he reaches mastery within about 12 to 14 trials. And then that response is maintained in the post-teaching session.
It looks great.
Yeah.
For all of the participants, really.
It really does. And then for set B, there's a similar pattern of training and then maintenance for him. He learned that skill in a shorter period of time. And then the really beautiful thing is that when they got down to set C, keep in mind for Wilson, they don't have those initial baseline data right before any training occurred. But without specific training in set C, he engaged in the needed response in both the incapable and capable trial types. So they saw the type of generalization that they were looking for Wilson. There was really similar responding across both of the other participants. Here they did test at the beginning, so they could actually say that
they were like,
they saw that the generalization to the new set of materials that they were looking for, which was pretty exciting. So there's similar pattern of responding here for Cooper and for Sylvie as well, both of them.
Yeah, and Cooper displayed generalized differential responding in set C as well.
Yeah.
With only teaching in set A, which is kind of awesome.
Yeah.
So, way to go. I mean, wouldn't you be like, if that was your like student, wouldn't you be like, I did it! And you're like high-fiving yourself all the way home?
Yeah. I know. It's exactly what you want to see, right? And then the way that they described that at the end, and I'm going to quote them because I just think that they said it so well, which was, requesting help was brought under antecedent control of the failed attempt. You only need to ask for help if you can't do it yourself.
Right.
And that's exactly what we should be teaching our students. It's not learned helplessness, right? Like, you don't need to just always be asking for help. You should try it yourself. And if you can't do it and you need help, then seek out assistance. And I think that would help us sit better with parents too, right? We're not just trying to have kids always need to have someone right next to them. Right? We are trying to teach them what is the appropriate time. Because I have situations all the time where I need to ask for help. I can't open those pickle jars for the life of me. I have to ask Rob.
Yep.
You know what I ask?
What?
I asked my awesome rubber mitt that opens all jars.
Oh, I had some of those like rubber circles.
That's what
but I broke those.
I'll have my aunt
from trying.
I'll have my aunt make you some. She's really good.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Christmas 2019.
I hit it really hard with a knife, like the knife handle on the edge of the lid.
That seems dangerous, though.
It's okay. My mom taught me how to do that.
I just love.
But sometimes it doesn't work, and I have to ask for help. That was the moral of the story.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, another way that we like to help folks who are listening to the show, other than just sharing this awesome information and discussing it, is by providing continuing education credits for the fun of listening. That's right. ABA Inside Track is ACE approved. So by listening to this show and going to our website, there's a link in the show notes as well, you can purchase CEs for this episode. All you need is your useful information about your status as a BCBA and 2 secret code words that we spread throughout the episode. So we're going to do our first secret code word right now, and it is Angelica. Angelica.
From Rugrats?
Yes. Angelica from Rugrats. That actually was what I was thinking of earlier.
Oh my God.
when I came
Because
up
I
with
said
that.
pickles.
Yes. No, I thought of it earlier. You did say something that reminded me of Rugrats, the old TV show on
Did I say-
Nickelodeon.
Wepta.
I don't remember what it was, but there's something that
I
made me
love
think
that
of
show.
made me think of Rugrats. So
Still on
Jackie got a reference.
Angelica.
I got it because you gave me something that was from the 90s and child-based. Basically, that's all I've watched in my life.
I think they're rebooting it, or
It's
they're
on
doing-
Nick at Night right now.
Really?
I mean, yes, it is.
Oh wow! I think they're rebooting. I heard they're rebooting it or
Cool,
something like
because
that.
it was amazing.
Yeah, Angelica. Before we move into our next article, why don't we take a couple minutes, take a little break? We'll be right back.
Hey, ABA Inside Trackers, it's me, Jackie.
And it's me, Diana. Jackie, I'm really excited to be joining you in this commercial because I've also started my career path at Regis.
Yay! Yes, that's right, folks. If you want to start an exciting career in applied behavior analysis, you should check out the Master's and Certificate program in Applied Behavior Analysis at Regis College. You can learn from both Diana and me. Here are some interesting facts about our program.
90% of our 2016 graduates passed the BCBA exam during their first time taking the exam. We think this is a really great testament to the program.
We started an on-campus autism center in fall 2017. The center provides behavior analytic services to children diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder right at Regis College. The center will offer employment opportunities for some of our graduate students. Students working at the center will receive partial tuition remission.
We also offer opportunities for paid clinical placements and graduate assistantships starting in the student's first year. So all of our grad students are currently working in the field either part-time or full-time.
Yes, we help students identify their practicum placements because we think it's imperative students receive excellent training and experience in the application of behavior analysis. Therefore, we screen placements to ensure students receive high-quality practicum placements.
We are approved by the BACB to provide intensive practicum. Students complete at least 750 hours, but most complete much more over the course of 3 semesters. Across that time, students complete a professional portfolio that includes completing a variety of application exercises, such as conducting assessments, developing behavior plans, training curriculum, and more. This portfolio functions as a way to ensure students are learning the essentials of being an effective behavior analyst and is a great way to showcase your work at job interviews upon graduation. I love it.
Students enroll in 2 courses per semester and graduate in a little under 2 years. Our courses are offered in traditional classroom and hybrid formats, which enables a student to focus on one course at a time while still completing the program quickly.
All of the faculty are PhD-level BCBAs with strong applied and research backgrounds in ABA, and all have published papers in respected peer-reviewed journals.
We ensure small class sizes so that all students receive personalized attention from their professors, and advisors are easily accessible to meet with students.
There is also an invited lecture series at Regis, which involves inviting outside experts in ABA to speak on specialized topics relating to practicing ABA, and these are really great opportunities for students to learn from a variety of experts in the field in addition to their professors.
And last summer, we completed an international service trip to Iceland, which we plan to do every other year.
Although we train students to work effectively with individuals diagnosed with autism, we also have opportunities for students to work with individuals with a variety of diagnoses and typically developing individuals as well. In addition, the coursework covers the broad applications of ABA with respect to solving socially important problems.
There are opportunities for students to be involved in faculty research as well.
We have a great location. We're just 12 miles from the center of Boston.
So check us out at www.regiscollege.edu.
See you there.
Keep responding.
And we are back with our topic, our exciting topic for this week in our second article. And of course, that topic, if you forgot, is help. Yep, that's right. We're continuing our talk of help, but a different kind of help. This is help-seeking behavior. And if you watch the preview, we had kind of I brought the whole show to a stop by talking about how you can't go a week in the news without hearing about a child or a young adult with autism who is lost. And, you know, many of them end happily with, oh, they're found. And I don't always read them all, so I can't say that all of them are because anything other than luck. So one of the skills that we want to make sure all children know, but especially children who might have limited ability to, communicate with others or to engage in multiple adaptive safety responses, is asking for help when they don't have a caregiver nearby. So Jackie, take it away.
Yeah, I think that Carlile, DeBar, Reeve, and Meyer actually set up the introduction really well, because they start off by saying like 91% of total deaths of children diagnosed with NASD up to 14 years old were from accidental drowning after they had wandered off or ran away, which is like
that's so sad.
Pretty large. And they said more than half of the people that were surveyed, of the 35%, said that their children could not answer social questions, said that they ran away, and that was really stressful for them, because if their child runs away, they can't answer social questions, so how are they going to find them?
Yeah.
Right? So these individuals are especially at risk if they get lost, not recognizing that they're lost, and then if they recognize that they're lost, not having the repertoire to seek help when needed.
Yeah.
So that was their plan. And one thing I love about this article is that they programmed both high-tech responses and low-tech responses.
I know, I like that a lot.
So a lot of studies have looked at either low-tech or high-tech responses. And when we're talking about low-tech or high-tech responses, we're talking about responses that use electronics or not, usually. And in this case, the low-tech response is just exchanging a communication card that has their name, address, phone number on it. And then the high-tech responses are dependent on age for this group. So they had two groups, and one made a FaceTime call and one answered a FaceTime call. So based on the age of the participant, they varied their response slightly. And if you...
Wasn't it also based on their ability to identify lost, not lost?
Yeah. And one thing that's really interesting about it, too, is that if you think FaceTime, when they answer FaceTime, they'll be able to see the location around them. Right? So that
I know, it's really
When
cool.
I was reading that, I was thinking, if one of my kids took the phone and like spun around in a circle slowly, I bet there are lots of places I'm like, I don't know, where are you? I see people and a road. It would be hard.
True,
unless they're in like a store, lost in a store, you know.
Right.
I know Target real well, so I can tell where they were.
and this is,
I know where you are.
Yeah, and that's really actually they were targeting is
Nice.
Is in stores. So they had a variety of stores, not necessarily in the road. But they did mention that if we only teach high-tech responses, FaceTime doesn't work when there's not Wi-Fi present.
FaceTime doesn't work in Target because you can't get a cell signal to save your life.
real.
It's
real hard.
What do they call that?
A vacuum.
No, it's
a black hole.
It's a term. No, it's a term for
dead spot.
No, when you put
Nobody
it's like a cage. Oh. Something cage.
I don't know, but my Cartwheel app stopped working because they discontinued it. And then in order to get the deal, I had to download the Target app, but I was in Target, so I couldn't download the Target app because I was in Target. And I went up to the lady and I was like, I can't do this. And I had to leave my cart there and go outside the store and turn off their Wi-Fi and download it on my data in order to use the Target app. So way to go, Target.
Yeah, so that's hard, right? So you could, if you're lost in Target, which is one of the stores that they actually looked at, it was actually sad, too. They looked at Toys R Us, and then I was like,
oh, if your kid's lost in Toys R Us, it's just going to look like a burnt-out shell with rats and
right.
angry juveniles.
Yeah, so they used a lot of different stores, but Target was one of the stores. Yeah. Another awesome thing about this research is that previously research looked at help-seeking behavior in kids 10 to 29 and didn't look at a younger population. So this study targeted children as young as 3 years of age because everyone can run away, right?
They sure can.
So I think that's really
we can?
Really
Thanks, Jaggy. See you later.
Guys, everyone can run away. another thing that I love that they did is they went to such great lengths to make sure that their study was socially valid.
Right?
Such great lengths. And we'll talk about that. So another thing that they decided to do is they were using video modeling, which we'll talk about, and then they wanted to program common stimuli, which they also went to such great lengths to program common stimuli within the teaching environment, which I was like, whoa, whoa. So they had 3 purposes of their study. They wanted to investigate whether their treatment package would be helpful at teaching a low-tech response and a high-tech response across the 2 groups, either calling or not calling, and receiving and exchanging a communication card. They also wanted to see, does the intervention implemented in a school setting generalize to community settings and other people? So,
love that.
Me too. They did the pre-assessment in the real world, taught in the classroom, and then assessed whether it would be effective in the real life. And then third, they wanted to see if skills would maintain over 1 and 2 week follow-ups. And then finally, they also did the social validity measure where they measured same aged peers, like typically developing peers on all of these during pre and post intervention, and asked 1 million people lots of questions, parents, caregivers, like literally anyone that they could find, I think.
Yeah.
They're just walking around like, take this.
Yeah, they went to great lengths.
Great lengths. Yeah. Which I always appreciate. When I saw that, I was like, oh man, that's, you're going for it.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that.
And you know it's a Sharon Reeve study when they're not afraid to use 1 million exemplars.
Right? Yeah. These exemplars, I cannot wait to tell you about these exemplars because these exemplars are top notch.
Yeah.
Man, I wish that I could see what this looked like. So anyway, there were 6 participants within the study. All were males, all diagnosed with ASD, and they ranged age 3 to 14. They were all in an ABA classroom for children with ASD or multiple disabilities, and all of them except for one had a 1-to-1 paraprofessional. They were invited to participate how they were. I love that. They were like, or irrespective of their mode of communication, the presence of stereotypic behaviors, or prior experience with iOS technology, they're like, you come as you are.
That's right.
As long as you haven't been taught how to ask for help when you're lost, come on into our study. They did measure a stereotypic behavior, but didn't include it in the study. They were excluded if they could not be out of arm's reach of someone. That makes sense. Due to a medical concern, as noted by the doctor. If they did not imitate a video model, because that was the main teaching procedure.
Sure.
And if they could not wear a camera or an ID bracelet. So that's the one thing I was a little bit concerned about, just because I wasn't sure what they're using the camera for. I guess I haven't quite figured it out yet.
Spelled it out.
They
that
didn't
clearly
yet. But I wonder if they then took data from it, or maybe they're using it in the pre-assessment to make sure they didn't get lost. But they did say they had a monitor watching the student.
Someone was always watching them, yeah.
Right, so I wasn't quite sure about what the camera was there for. That one might be helpful for clarification purposes. So originally they had 8 participants, but 2 got
lost.
2 got lost. No, 2 were excluded because they had seizures or other medical disorders.
Gotcha. And that's not to say that students that don't have some of these prerequisite skills couldn't also learn the types of things that they're working on here. It's just that they didn't have a history with that. And
or they couldn't learn in the modality that was going to be
like
used
the
for the
video
study.
model.
So.
Right, so it could have taken a lot of extra time.
Sure.
But if you work with those types of students, that's not to say that you can't first build upon the skills that they have and shape wearing the ID bracelet or handing over the card or whatever it might be, and then be ready to participate.
Yeah, and so I also wanted to put in the participant, they described the typical developing peers. So there was 4 males and 2 females, and they were age matched and they were of typical development. They provided a measure of social validity in the pre and post measurement, and no participant was formally taught what to do when lost. That's also important. So they just assessed, but were not exposed to the study. But
there was like a 14-year-old that no one's ever talked to.
They didn't formally teach them.
Oh, okay.
Right? So they probably indirectly taught them, or they learned via observation.
Fair enough. Okay.
Right? But they weren't formally taught. They didn't sit down and be like, hey, when you're lost, now let's practice. Yeah. I'm assuming.
Okay. Fair enough.
So some of the stores that they looked at were Toys R Us,
R.I.P.
Michael's, Target, Home Depot, and ShopRite. I've never been
Grocery
to a ShopRite.
store?
I
Yeah.
think so, yeah.
It's a grocery store.
Oh, they were in close proximity to the participants' home. So here's amazing. So they went in and got approval from the store manager and the human resources department prior to conducting the session. So that's actually really nice. They're like, hey, we're not trying to steal kids, or
Right.
they're
Or
like,
leave children
Yeah.
alone.
here's what we're doing.
Mhm.
And they also got to borrow
Yeah.
baskets,
Yeah.
vests, name tags, store banners. Like, they really went
Uniforms. too.
uniforms. They had anything that the employees wore, they got a copy of and used them in the intervention session.
It's like a good community outreach
Yeah.
project, I would think. And then, I'm sure a lot of the companies can report back like, oh, this is how because you want your company to be appreciated by the community. Like, oh, well, we work with local schools
Right.
to, help children
yeah.
with disabilities be safe.
Yeah, so that's pretty nice. And so what they did was they took all of these stimuli and they built basically a store in the classroom, which is amazing. So
It
they
is
had two
amazing.
pictures of the aisle printed on foam core board. So they were 91 centimeters by 122 centimeters.
I don't think that's that big.
It feels big, but I don't think it's that big. But they were included in the classroom, and 5 items from the store were on the shelves next to these pictures. A picture of the register area was displayed on the smart board within
Yeah,
the classroom.
it's like they could have just gotten a blue screen and be like, look, whoa, it's like you're there.
And they hung a banner from each store from the ceiling of the classroom to represent what it was. It's like, it's Toys R Us! So I love that. And then I love that they said, too, that, when we weren't having experimental sessions, these items were not here. So we didn't leave the store up all
Right.
day long, which I think is good to know. And probably teachers appreciated that. Like, teachers probably wouldn't want a little Toys R Us mock-up
Right.
in their classroom all the time, especially right near the smart board.
Yeah.
Sorry, you can't work. Toys R Us is here. So they had videos for the low-tech response and the high-tech response for each of the 5 stores. So there was 5 videos. That's a pretty intense work,
Yeah.
I would say.
No corners were cut.
No. And high-tech videos were recorded in the community setting, and low-tech were recorded equally in the community setting and in the instructional setting. To represent the actual store, the videos included a school staff member who wore a specific shirt, vest, or apron in the aisle or register area of that store, they went to know. It was amazing. Their videos were only around a minute long, which I think
That's
is good to
plenty.
notice.
Yeah.
And they taught a 6-step chain for the low-tech response for the students that could identify if they were lost when asked during pre-assessment, and a 4-step chain for those who could not identify that they were lost. And they did a 9-step chain in the high-tech response for those that could identify that they were lost. 3 students, Mark, Corey, and Noah. And a 5-step chain for those who could not identify they were lost during the pre-assessment. They taught that pretty much how we would imagine. They set up the store, and it was counterbalanced, so no store was shown in a row,
Right.
which I love. They're like, okay, today's Toys R Us.
Mhm.
And they had
This
this
requires so much setup.
and thought. Yeah, it really does. And so then
Like every day you're like, let's set up the store.
they set the store up. I imagine it to be like, I don't know, with like the foam boards and
Yeah.
the smart board and the lady putting the outfit on. The store was set up. The students sat down and watched the video twice. And then they went shopping in the store. So the experimenter was with them. And then the experimenter looked away or went to another aisle. As in baseline, they just moved out of the way. And then the participants were expected to watch, to do what they ask, either exchange the card, or if they had a phone, call someone or answer the phone. And then if they did it wrong, they were immediately stopped and shown that one chain in the video model once again. And if they continued to do it wrong, then they were manually graded. So that's the error correction procedure that they used. And students could not move forward in this until they completed 2 consecutive sessions at 100% without the video model across all the stores. So once they mastered it with the video modeling, then they had to do it in the absence of the video.
Great.
Across all the stores.
Yeah.
And so then after that, they did a maintenance follow-up, which was a little confusing for me, I'm not going to lie, because in the maintenance section, they say that they were going to assess the skills 1 and 2 weeks following in the classroom with the experimenter serving as the caregiver, but then they talk in the discussion and the results as a new location. So I'm wondering if they say here, so in the actual graph, they show like a new location. In the discussion, they talk about it generalizing to the new locations, not just in the classroom, but in the text, they specify that it's in the classroom. So that's fairly interesting.
This is for maintenance?
It's maintenance and post-intervention.
Yeah.
So that's
the post-intervention is in the community.
Post-intervention occurred 3 to 4 weeks after the participant met mastery criteria in the classroom. Oh, yeah. A primary caregiver participated during one post-intervention session. Procedures were identical to pre-intervention, which happened in the community. Okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
I saw the word
Maybe you read in the classroom.
And I was like, what?
Yeah.
I'm so confused. But then, again, I was confused. Looked to the graph, and I was like, oh, look, there are the new locations in the graph. And I was like, okay, I feel a little bit better. Because then I was like, oh, my God, are they lying? Like, at once I got, like, a little sweaty, you know, when you get pulled over by a cop, and you're like, oh, my God, I'm speeding.
What's happening?
I'm going to get a big ticket. But really, I didn't.
Most of my research, I read research, I feel that way. Like I'm about to be arrested.
I just got a police warning. It was fine.
One other thing I think we should mention is how they determined if they could discriminate lost versus not lost.
That's true.
Because
the video, right?
Yes. So that's what they did. They showed them 10 different videos of someone in the video being lost
quick.
or not
They're like,
lost.
listen, you either know this or you don't know this. It doesn't matter. We need to move on with our research study. We've got 800 stores to visit.
But I thought that was a good way to do it.
Yeah.
And they did normative data related to that as well. So they checked to see another
I
people
forgot
identify.
to bring that up. Yeah.
Because as I was thinking about it, I was like, well, how are they ever going to determine if they're lost or not lost? Because someone's standing there to ask them,
Right.
Are you lost? Are you lost right now? Do you have anyone to talk to? But it was through a video.
Yeah.
So that's how they figured it out.
Yeah. Sorry, I did not include that.
That's okay. It's just a good
Do they use clips from the TV show Lost?
There's a polar bear.
That would be confusing.
But one nice thing to note is that there was 3 participants in the beginning that could not identify that they were lost, and then following training, they did identify that they were lost at like 100% and 90% accuracy. There was one participant that got 50%, so that's at chance level.
Yeah.
But, you know, that shows that it was actually the intervention that helped them indicate whether they were lost or not, because nothing else changed, which I thought was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that is really awesome.
Yeah. And so what we find in our graphs is, so for all of the participants, we see low levels of responding during pre-intervention and baseline. So remember, pre-intervention was in the actual stores, across a variety of stores, and baseline was in the classroom, and this is across both low-tech and high-tech responses. But during intervention, we see for Mark an immediate increase to 100% of independent responses following video modeling for both the high-tech and low-tech in the school. And then during maintenance, you also see that high-tech and low-tech remain high. And during post-intervention, it still remains high in both the community and in the school setting. So that's nice.
Yeah, he really rocked it.
He did. And basically everyone rocked it.
These results felt too good.
They felt amazing.
honest.
Like, really, the only
These
person...
are like the hypothetical results you think you're going to get.
Yeah, so these are the only time that someone got below 100% responding was Noah. So during his first session in intervention, so when he first followed the video model, he scored only 40% for both the low-tech and high-tech. But after that, 100% for everything, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And this was Group A, though, so this is Group A that could indicate that they were lost.
Right.
So that's important to note.
It is, but also the chains that they learned were longer.
The chains, yep. So, but results were slightly different, but equally as awesome for the Group B responses. So the students that could not indicate that they were lost, again, we saw low rates of responding during intervention and baseline, aka nothing. And then intervention, you see a steady increase. So here's more of what I would imagine to see in life is not all the way to 100% accuracy right in the beginning.
It was still very fast.
Oh, yeah, super fast.
And I'm wondering how much of it was the... but does it always work that fast?
It depends.
I feel like the correction procedure they used was much more progressive than I think, because a lot of times the video modeling sort of just watch the video and then the kid either does or doesn't, and then you watch the video later and then they do it or they don't.
Traditionally, there's no prompting.
Yeah, with here it almost felt more like TA correction procedure of like, oh, you messed up, so now you gotta practice it again.
Yeah, you have to watch the video, and then if you still get it wrong, then I'm gonna correct you.
Yeah, that's a really good point to bring up, that there was prompting added.
Right. That error correction procedure does seem to be really effective because once students start acquiring responses, they never drop back. It is always in a forward motion. For all 3 of these participants as well, you see just a steady increase in responding to basically 100%, I think.
Yeah.
Basically 100% for everyone across maintenance.
6 sessions was the longest it took to train
exactly.
the response.
Which is amazing.
It's a complex response, too. It's not even sort of like, oh, we're, put these Legos together in a stack. It's we got to identify, find this person and give them this card. I mean, that's some high-level discrimination.
Right, yeah. And what's so interesting, too, is that it was effective with the parents as well. So the parents were the experimenters in the post-intervention follow-up and the new community. So they served as the experimenter in one. So it actually worked for them, too. Yeah. Which I love.
Yeah. And the high-tech responses were the ones that needed more training.
Right.
For this group.
It makes sense.
And they may have been less familiar with using the iOS.
And so one thing that it's good to note is they did social validity. And generally, the procedures were favorable for both parents and teachers. However, teachers noted that they were concerned about the affordability, which makes sense, of the procedures. Because if the students need to be wearing those cameras, those cameras are fairly expensive. And they were worried about the time it took to set up, which makes sense. Because, I mean, if you're creating a store every day, that seems like it would take a lot of time. So they did a lot of stuff in the start.
This feels like one of those things of no one's going to run this unless somebody makes the commercial product kit and they make the deal with all the companies. So it's like you buy the box for $300 and you've got all your jerseys in there and you've got all the props you need and you just need to set it up.
Or even better, it's all attached and you just hit a button and it all blows up like a balloon. So then you don't even have to do any setup. Because I can imagine even this setup is kind of time consuming. If you have to set up the foam boards and put the 5 items on the shelves for each.
And it feels like the kind of thing you might see in like, oh, it's the vocational class. It may be your high school. But this study shows that, no, you could teach kids who are as young as 3. And I don't think parents go, you know what? I wasn't worried about my child with severe disabilities until they turned 14 and went to high school. They probably were more worried when they were 3 and 4.
Yeah, no, it's so true. So I think that's so interesting to note, too, is that that's where teachers were a little less excited about actually running it and the affordability of it, because they did list all the materials that they needed, but the teachers didn't see the price. So it was all the list of materials without the price. So even just looking at the list of materials, they were like, ooh.
This feels, and I think they mentioned, the authors mentioned as a limitation, the thoroughness and the setup. This does feel like the sort of thing that would not occur in, say, your community public school unless there was a huge push from parents or safety is our number one concern here in the blankety blank school district. Because it's not that people don't care, but I mean, how many towns probably could say, I can't think of a time our police were called for, a child with disability getting lost. Therefore, the amount of time and expense doesn't seem to be a good use. We can teach it as we go, or we'll do it some other easier ways.
And it's also to note, too, that we already talked about the care and, like, the thoughtfulness and the thoroughness that this study showed us right at the onset. And it was a PhD. It was a dissertation. So that's something.
They had some time to kill.
They had some time to kill. They had some thoughts. So that's something to also take into consideration, too, that, she did probably a lot of legwork on this beforehand. One limitation, I think, is that they didn't assess if the high-tech component failed, would they then use the low-tech component? They just trained both of them. And the authors state this is a limitation as well, that further research should look at, if you have a high-tech option, it doesn't work, you're in Target, you try to FaceTime. Right. Then
it definitely won't work because it's I looked it up, Faraday cage.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I did not even hear that word before.
Is that like what's at the Museum of Science? That thing?
That's a Van de Graaff generator, I believe.
Where it sparks like the...
I think that might be a Tesla coil.
Oh, okay.
Electricians, right in.
We have so many electrician followers. But yeah, so that's something that would be important, right? Because if you've taught them one response without substituting the other response, they may, in the face of their phone, use that as a discriminative stimuli. So, I'm lost. I'm going to use my phone, but if my phone doesn't work, they may not have thought
what's the next step?
Grabbing. Right. They just probably stand there.
Right.
Or,
which is okay, too.
Or maybe they don't.
Maybe they don't. They just walk away.
Maybe they just
who knows?
Play Candy Crush instead.
Right. We don't know.
We got the phone out.
I think you need an internet connection for Candy Crush to work.
No.
Really?
No.
Oh.
But yeah, so that's something interesting too that we don't necessarily know. But the data on social validity was very strong.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, developing peers were engaging in these responses without being formally trained, as young as 3 and as old as 14, asking, I'm lost, or calling if they have a phone, which would be weird.
Most 3-year-olds don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they could have a card in their pocket, right? You could teach them to give that card over. Or their bracelet.
Yes.
Their ID bracelet. Most kids that have a running away history usually do have bracelets on.
Yeah.
Or should.
I always provided those for the students that I worked with. And, the parents could choose how much information they wanted to have on there, but it would minimally have a contact number or something for the parent, so that then we would teach the child to just hold their arm out and either point to it or even just hold their arm out to someone if they were asked. Like, I would ask them, what's your name? Where's your mom? And are you lost?
Right.
Yeah.
So those are good things.
Mm-hmm.
So this study, I think, was really helpful, and it really pushed the literature in a good way. They taught using video modeling procedures and the error correction procedures, and they programmed common stimuli into a very structured intervention setting that then showed or demonstrated generality at novel stores with novel people and with their parents, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah. I love that they included the parents.
Me too. I bet the parents were too.
Because you just wonder, is it really going to
Ever work.
yeah. Right? Or if, I feel like that would feel so much more real to the student. So would they get really scared if their parents left and not engage in the trained responses because a lot of emotional responding was happening. But that didn't happen. They did it. So it was great.
Yeah, and I love, just one more thing I want to direct from the authors.
Yeah, man.
Is that they suggested that the acquisition of this skill may enhance a family's quality of life by increasing safe access to the community. This general effect of teaching help seeking when lost should be evaluated. I love that. So they're even
End
thinking.
quote.
I know, right? Page 204. They're really thinking about like the long-term effects of the social validity of this procedure and how it might help family long-term. I love that. Like, they didn't just stop at like, hey, we're going to ask every single person under the sun what they thought about these specific procedures, but how that's going to help long-term when kids get older, kids access the community more independently.
Nice.
Love it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Jackie. Let's move into our dissemination station to get some final thoughts on the topic of help. In terms of the Carlile, I feel like what? Oh, sorry, you didn't make a sound. I played a sound effect. You missed
okay.
it. I didn't play a train sound effect. If you want to make a train sound effect,
I do.
go ahead and make a train sound effect.
Why do you think I come every Sunday?
Sorry. There we go. So,
Whew, I'm sweaty off of that long train ride.
Oh, mercy.
The Carlile article, I like in the sense that it reads very much like here's a ready-made procedure for teaching children what to do when lost. But it really feels like, look, I invented this new technology. It's $50 million. It needs someone to come along and be like, let's make the consumer grade version of this. So it really needs an extension which takes apart, there's like a component analysis of, do we need this many stores for generalization? Can we just do 2 stores? Do we need, do you need the lost versus not lost step? Can we skip that completely and just pick they don't know lost, who cares? Because, hey, maybe other kids learn lost versus not lost. That would be the baseline. Let's not actually, doesn't matter even if they know lost, not lost. We're still going to give everyone the same procedure, the potentially easier of the 2 procedures, at least the shorter of the 2 procedures. And then, hey, if everyone who didn't know lost before learns lost or a higher percentage do, great. Who cares if they know lost or not lost? This procedure might help teach that. Let's just move along with it. So I definitely think this would benefit from like a nice component analysis extension.
Do we need the vests?
Do we need all this stuff?
Do we need the tags?
Because this is an intervention that I can't imagine anyone in special education or anyone who's working with families on lost, not lost wouldn't say, yes, this is it. I don't know if I can do all this. What else could I do? And
but I love it.
Yeah.
When I thought about this, I got so excited about reading it because they thought of everything, right? So I love when research starts off thinking of everything, so the next research can cut that down, right? So they've thought about the whole thing, and now we can then tear that apart and see what's necessary or what's sufficient, what's going to be effective. So do we need the banner? Right? Do we need the picture of the smartboard? Do we need the aisles? Like now we can slowly deconstruct what we need piece by piece without having to rebuild it again. And I think that's the harder part, is rebuilding something.
Yeah.
or trying to fill in the blanks when it doesn't work, when everything's there.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. I get
so
that.
I really appreciate this article because no one's done this before with low-tech and high-tech responses. No one's
they
done
done
this.
components of it. This felt like
Components, right.
the amalgamation of
Right.
all the research that had come before, and now you got to take it that step further.
Right,
Of, okay,
and
well, do we need
deconstruct
all
it.
of this? Like, what are the actual components that matter
Right.
the most?
Or, I mean, I'm just saying, maybe Carlile's going to make a little, like, Target box and sell it, man.
I already said that, so that's my idea now, Carlile. You write to me. I will let you license my idea to take your research and put it in a box. That's the copyright. Trademark me.
But we probably shouldn't.
Safety in a box.
We probably shouldn't use Toys R Us because it'll be null and void.
Yep.
Defunct.
It's a limitation of the study. This store no longer exists.
That's certainly not their fault.
We went to Blockbuster and Toys R Us and
Radio Shack.
Radio Shack still exists
there's like 2 Radio Shacks.
in malls.
It's just
And
hanging
malls
on by the skin of its
around
teeth
America.
there.
Another thing that they note too as a limitation, which I think might be interesting, is not everybody has an iPhone. Right, so not everyone
they didn't
can
use it.
FaceTime.
Yeah, I think they mentioned you should try this again with like Android
Skype
and
or an Android.
they're-
So is there another
Sure.
comparable thing to use on your phone if you don't have an
Yeah.
iPhone? Because not everyone in the world has an iPhone.
yeah.
And it might be harder too, right? Because Skype, you have to like log in, and is there a way that you can keep yourself always on, or is there some other app that may be useful for that? Or could you even have an app that you have like a little on all phones? You could have an app that you just hit, and it's like, "Help, I'm lost. Help, I'm lost."
That's a good
right?
idea.
So that might be a good way to disseminate this, because then all students have to do is like click that button,
Yeah.
and then someone may hear them.
Mm.
Someone wrong may hear them. Right, like you have to think
Oh,
good, bad, right?
yeah, that's
good
true.
employee, bad. Someone's gonna steal
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Just thinking out
It's
loud.
a good idea.
Mhm.
I was thinking about what I'd want to make if I was an app maker, like an I'm lost
It's a great idea.
app. Maybe there's one out there.
I think finding a way to extend this outside of this big store
Yeah,
would be good too. So I know like not all this technology may work outdoors, but that's a pretty common place to get lost is outdoors or at a park, or if you've gone on a hike or something. Finding some way to modify this for that scenario would be good to me.
that also might be helpful for hikers
Yeah.
in the North Woods.
Mhm.
I actually
Is
subscribe.
this your new plan? Is
Find a
Make
bear.
apps?
Ask
No.
the bear to help you.
No, but I
Hand over your ID
I
card.
subscribe to the Adirondack Weekly like posts, and so anytime a hiker gets lost, I get an email that's like, "Attention, this hiker is lost, and this is how long they've been lost for." And most of the time, people are lost for like 2 days. That's because they got off the trail and then they didn't know how to contact anyone. Their phone died.
Mhm.
Is there something that we could give someone? Right, because then they like send like every single person out to look for them. And it costs
I
like
think you're talking
billions of
about-
dollars.
I think you're talking
If
about
your
like
phone's dead.
GPS and
I don't know.
and yeah, that's less about knowing what to do when you're lost. Like, because there's no one to find. And if you can't call somebody, you're sort of in the woods, and you got to look at a map. And
But that might happen too. That might happen with your kids. Your kids are outside at the playground, right? They wander off, their phone's dead, or they don't have a phone if they're 3, right? Like, what do? You can't just hand an exchange card to a tree,
right.
right? Like, you have to.
that's a different.
Yeah.
But that would be more, I think, the prevention of
I guess you're right.
getting
yeah.
in that situation. Because I don't think there's any sort of video model of what do you do when you're
Yeah.
lost in the woods on a hike.
Right? You sit there.
I think that's not one where it's
That's
like,
what
oh,
we
you're
teach our kids is
Right.
sit
Yeah,
down.
sit down.
Sit down where you are. Don't try to find anyone. You
Yeah.
stay where
Right.
you are. We'll come find you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I did lose a child at the movies.
You did?
I did, yeah.
Which one?
The
Middle?
little one.
Oh, wow.
He was where I left him.
Good.
He didn't come through the ticket gate. He was just still standing there.
Well, he listened to your instructions.
Yeah. He was just like turning in circles. He's safe. I had a lot of children with me. It was like more than my max number, apparently, because I lost one.
Yeah, well, that happens.
Another thing to mention is that they do make what I don't know a better term than low jack
The low jack bracelets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
for children with
Mhm.
I guess any child could
Any
have
child,
one, but
yep.
you can apply for those for children
Yes,
with special
but
needs.
those are preventative. There's no skill involved. It's
No,
just safe,
but just as
pure
we're having
safety.
this conversation,
Oh, if you don't know that
if,
exists,
you know,
yes.
if you work with a client that is really prone to getting away and could potentially be lost, then that can be a really good preventative strategy.
Yep.
Yeah, I kind
of not to getting lost, because they don't stop you from getting lost, but to being found there can be very helpful. So it can
And
give
very
parents peace
discreet
of
now.
mind.
Yes.
and very
Yeah.
discreet now.
And they shouldn't have the same problems that you'd run into with like a Find My Phone on an iPhone.
Right,
Right.
yeah,
Your
they
phone
continue
dies,
to
or
work.
it's in a place that's not getting cell signal.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's not going to replace teaching safety skills, but it can provide some peace
Yeah.
of mind.
Yeah.
It's for safety, but does not teach safety skills.
Right.
It's not a safety skill.
But I think these are two really important skills when you're teaching help. Teaching help when and only when it's appropriate to ask. And I think also in this case, too, it's appropriate not for students to always ask for help. Like if they're in a store, to automatically pick up their phone and call someone.
Right.
Or automatically be handing their exchange card to like any person
Right.
that has like a badge on. That's also
Sometimes you just need to
something.
just like check the next aisle.
Right.
Like, oh, there's my person.
Right. So that might be
I
an
just
extension
the
here
straggler
too.
there for a second.
Well,
Yeah.
Donna, you were excited when you finished your summary of the article and said, "I can't wait for dissemination station." What particularly did you want to talk about?
So for my article, I think that the main points are that we ensure that we're programming not just for teaching help across the board, but that we're setting up opportunities where the EO is present and absent.
Right.
So we're really teaching the proper discrimination in the presence of the EO that they're going to encounter later on in novel scenarios. So we're really teaching requesting help only when it's necessary.
And my study hits that kind of indirectly on one of the behavior change. It's like looks up and turns head 2 times, like in either direction. But I mean, if you're just teaching that, it could be like then look like a weird like head nod, right? If they're
Right.
not actually noticing if someone's around, they're just like looking up
Yeah.
and like
right.
And they didn't formally assess that.
Right,
They didn't
yeah.
have trials where it was, and sometimes the adult was actually
Right.
popped out from
Right.
behind an end cap.
Right,
and-
so-
could be a really good.
yeah. So this is amalgamation of is that the word I'm looking for?
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool, I made it. Of the 2 studies is, extend this study, maybe do a deconstruction of everything, but also maybe just look in a community setting. Because if you have buy-in by like Target and Michael's, you could just go there, maybe not train, not train necessarily in the classroom, take out all that crap, and then train like if...
You heard it here first, folks. All that was crap.
No, it's
according to
not. No,
Jackie.
it's not crap. It's actually really amazing. But like take all of the extraneous stuff that teachers would have to do. And if you have community movements already built into your
Right,
day,
yeah.
you could just go, make sure Target or Michael's knows, and then make sure that the EO is present so that they're not just handing their exchange card to everyone.
To everyone, right.
Which I've seen happen.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's
better,
a good,
better
great
than
point.
nothing,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's
right.
not the
So
response,
where's
no.
the discrimination component there of when to do this?
So a beautiful marriage between Rodrigo and Carlile.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great. All right. So
That was fun.
that's good. Good stuff. Good topic.
I feel like I
very
need-
applicable.
And I received it.
So before we wrap up, I want to make sure anyone who's listening for both information and CEs gets their second secret code word. And that second secret code word is REN. R-E-N. Not the bird, although we'll give you credit if you do it. REN. R-E-N. Does anyone know why I chose REN to go along with our last secret code word?
I do.
Okay. Do you want to say what it is?
Yeah, Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah. From the popular programming block, SNCC, from the 90s.
Oh, yeah. I got Ren, but I was like, how does that align with Rugrats? But now I get it, because I only watched Ren and Stimpy when it was on MTV.
Yep. Oh, really? Was it on MTV? I
Yeah.
watched it on Nickelodeon.
I watched it on MTV.
That show was so weird.
Awesome. It was my favorite. I actually had a Ren and Stimpy doll, and then I really wanted to, don't step on the electric fence.
No. You don't whiz on the
Oh,
electric
don't
fence.
whiz on the electric fence.
You remember Log?
I never liked this show.
It's log, it's
So
log,
stupid.
it's big, it's heavy, it's wood. It's log, it's better than bad, it's good. Everyone wants a log. Come on and get your log.
Oh, you like it? You like the game?
No,
Ren.
I don't.
And that brings us to the end of our episode on Help! Yes, unfortunately, it's time for us to go. I want to thank everyone out there who listened to our show. Please, if you liked it, feel free to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher. You can subscribe at any of those places, plus Spotify or anywhere else you get your podcasts. We really love hearing from people who are listening to the show with feedback. So other than leaving a review, you can also feel free to reach out to us on social media as ABA Inside Track or at our email address, abainsidetrack@gmail.com. You can additionally find us on the web is abainsidetrack.com and on YouTube as well, where these episodes will also get posted. Thank you also, how could I forget, say thank you for all your help to Diana and Jackie.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
And that brings us to the end of the show. Thanks everyone so much for being here. We'll be back next week with our preview episode to let you know what exciting topic is coming up next. But until then, keep responding. Bye.
Bye.